Hey, Dostie here, Dostie View. I wanted to talk about ski poles today, all right? Back in the day, I'm talking way back, like the 80s, the only adjustable ski poles you could get were adjustable with a twist lock, like this, okay? Leaky was the most common one. This is a Gravel self-arrest grip. I don't use this very often. I only use it when I really need to, like when I'm climbing something steep and icy and I just can't afford to be taking the big slide, all right? But the problem with this pole is that it's a twist lock. And what happens with twist locks, I mean, you can tighten them real tight by twisting, but when you're climbing, you tend to do a little bit of this with your hand all the time, right? Just a twist action every step you take. And so what happens is you get little micro twists going on, and eventually it loosens, and then you go to put your hand on it and it collapses. And it always seems to happen on the first turn in a really steep couloir where you can't afford to have your equipment fail you. So I do not recommend twist locks. That was followed later on by a push button adjustment, which Paul Raymer came out with, and actually it was beautiful. It was very reliable, and several years later, Leakey copied the design. The only problem with it is, see these open holes here? When you're on a windy ridge, if that's where you tend to set your pole, those open holes will whistle. It's really annoying. I mean, you know, it doesn't mean that the pole isn't working. It's just you're hearing this whistling sound all the time. So then in the early 90s, Jason Quintana came up with the flick lock system, which he sold to Black Diamond. Black Diamond took advantage of that patent for several years, and they were the only ones on the market who had an adjustable ski pole with this flick lock design that would not collapse, or it might, but if it did, all you had to do was adjust this screw to make the clamp a little bit tighter, okay? And they're available in 2 and 3 section models. If you're a split boarder, you definitely want the 3 section model so you can compress this thing way down, short enough that if it doesn't fit in your pack, it'll fit on the outside without sticking up a whole bunch, all right? Leakey came up with a pretty cool design for snowboarders. It combines the push button concept with this right here and a flick lock. So the flick lock allows it to do, if you will, like a micro adjustment for fine-tuning the overall length. And then for storage, like when you're traveling, you just press this button in here. It collapses, and then the sections come apart, and look at that. That's a really short pole that stores easily inside your pack or wherever, okay, in your luggage, right? So very small and compact, love it. The other thing that I really like about the Leakey poles is this ergonomic grip. When you're poling, going uphill, having a nice grip that your hand rests on is a really big deal because it's going to be there for a long time with repetitive action, and if it's not smooth like that, well, you could end up getting a blister right there. Pain in the butt. Belay has joined the crowd, okay? They came up with a nice round top. They're using a basic flick lock for adjustment, okay? And they also added something that BCA pioneered, a little scraper here for scraping off the top of the snow off the top of your skis, because it tends to build up over time, and you know, you're lugging more weight. So you don't want to do that if you don't have to. This is the BCA design, okay? It's not quite as comfortable in terms of palming, but it's not bad. Not bad at all, okay? What I like about the BCA, they use the classic flick lock, but they offer a ski pole that goes from 105 all the way up to 145. And most adjustable ski poles, especially the two-section ones, don't have that wide of a span. They tend to go usually from 120 to 145, or if they're starting below, like around 105 or 100, they tend to only go to 135. Now, why do you need an adjustable pole? Let's deal with that before we go too much further here. Originally, when I first had my adjustable poles, I would set them to different lengths because when you're going up a hill, the pole on the uphill side doesn't need to be as long as the pole on the downhill side. So I would have a short pole for the uphill and a long pole for the downhill. But I learned that it was really a pain to have to switch poles when you did a switchback. There's no real need to do that. So what I have done and what most other people have done is rather than changing the pole length, okay, I just add some duct tape right here so that when this is hand is the uphill side, instead of having my hand way up here, I bring it down and I hold it on the tape, okay? Other companies have incorporated that concept, like G3 right here in their Via poles has a little plastic piece here that your hand rests on for the uphill side. They also have a real nice rounded ergonomic tip. This strap can be taken out. For those of you who are like me and you don't really like straps because you don't want to be attached to your pole, if you're caught in an avalanche, you just want to ditch it, okay? But it's also easy to clip back in if you say you're on a traverse and you can't afford to drop your pole. Well, you can put that back in and then you got a nice grip. If you drop it, you don't lose it, right? That's a very cool concept. And G3 is also using flick lock here as well, okay? They're all variations of the same theme, and thank you again, Jason, for developing it. So if you don't use adjustable poles to compensate for traversing on a hill, what do you need them for? Well, number one, I find that when I'm telemarking, I might, if I'm on groomers, I might have a taller stance, so I might want my pole to be a little bit taller. If I'm going through bumps or just I'm sinking deep on my telly, I want a shorter pole. But the main reason I adjust it is when I'm in the backcountry, I'll have it pretty short because I'll have a pretty low mid stance. But when I get down to the bottom and there's a big long flat section out to the trailhead or actually wherever, okay, it's a big long flat. At that point, I want the pole as long as I can make it so I can get a long pole when I'm Nordic striding over the flats, and that helps me get a little bit more momentum and maintain it. So that's the main reason I use adjustable poles. I customize my length for making telly turns, and then I'll make it as long as I possibly can when I'm skating out on the flats. You know, the other thing you always got to look at is baskets. I don't think you want a really tiny basket like this. I mean, this is good for hardpack, but in most instances, you want a fairly sizable basket so you get flotation and powder. And you may also want to look at the basket to see if it has some additional functionality. This G3 basket, this short section here, this is it's effectively stiffer on these two wings. The length gives you some powder flotation, but these shorter wings here hook on a tech binding to maybe release the lever, the toe lever, or to lock it, or maybe you're going to release or lock your climbing posts on your heel. I think that's it. There's a whole bunch of good ones out there, okay? Do yourself a favor, make sure it's some kind of a flick lock. Get a nice rounded handle on the top so you can palm it without getting blisters. It's good to have something, G3 calls this a beak, and that's also good for hooking on things with your binding to change modes. What else? Well, lightweight. Of course you want lightweight if you can get it, but there's a price to be paid for that, so don't go overboard. I mean, you can be a gram counter, it really isn't going to save you, okay? Okay, so a quick tutorial on adjustable ski poles. Remember, free your heel, that'll free your mind. You don't have to follow the herd, and spread Telemark.